after you'd already given her the pudding that you say you laced with the arsenic trioxide. Is that right?
That's correct.
Okay. But you'd given her that to give to her husband when he was going to be in Tehachapi. Is that right?
That's correct.
You recall what days he was working at Tehachapi? In April of 2014?
Not precisely right now.
The intent was to give him this item when he was working at Tehachapi, according to you. Is that right?
Yes, sir.
And the only days that he worked in Tehachapi were April 24th and April 25th, right?
I don't have a great recollection of those specific dates right now, but that sounds about right, sir.
Been previously marked as People's Exhibit 23. The spreadsheet depicting the days that Rob Lamomam was working in Tehachapi during the month of April. You see Rob Lamomam's name?
I do.
And can you follow it over the line where his name is listed, what days he worked in Tehachapi?
If the SW indicates he was working there, it appears to be the 24th and the 25th.
Now, what day was it that you actually took this pudding, as you put it, to Sabrina?
As I testified previously, I'm not exactly sure on the specific date. I apologize. It was late April though, and it would have been one of those days, or just prior to one of those days. So either the 23rd or the 24th.
Now, you would agree Sabrina's a good mom, right? Would you not? She's a good mother?
Relatively, yes.
Well, you, in your notes, put that she was a loving, thoughtful, caring mother. Did you not?
I don't recall if I did or not. I certainly believe I did.
And certainly in the telephone conversations, at least one of them, you said that, the thing you loved about her was because she cared about her children so much, right?
Absolutely.
Okay. And you indicated in your testimony that this pudding that you put together with the arsenic trioxide that you purportedly delivered to Sabrina, she put it in her refrigerator after you gave it to her. Is that right?
Yes, sir.
Potentially putting her children in danger of eating that pudding, right? If you actually delivered it to her and she knew about it. Right?
No, sir.
It's in a refrigerator, right? According to you.
Yes, sir.
You don't know who's going to get into it or who's going to have access to it, right? If you'd actually given her anything like that, right?
Yeah, I was not overseeing the status of her refrigerator.
There's a risk that Rob could have eaten it at his own home, right?
To clarify, I believe I brought it at night, the night before, and it was relatively late at night. If I remember correctly, Rob was away. I believe he was at work somewhere, and then he was going to come, evidently pick up lunch from Sabrina and then take it away. So it was my understanding that it would only be in her refrigerator a very short amount of time.
You knew that Rob worked days when he was working the Barstow rail yard, right?
I didn't keep track of his schedule, no, sir.
Well, you were seeing his wife. You had to know when he was away at work, right?
Yeah, she would let me know when he was away.
And you knew that his normal schedule when he was working in Barstow was to work at 7 in the morning till 3 in the afternoon. You knew that, right?
I knew that was his regular schedule, yes.
Okay. And we know that in April, based upon this spreadsheet that's been provided, that Rob worked for SW, that'd be Sean Ware, right?
I don't know the layout of that.
Well, take a look. SW that's in Rob's line of when he was working on April 24th and 25th, right?
Yes, sir.
And we know that he was working for Sean Ware, or at least working Sean Ware's shift on the 24th and 25th, right? Based upon Sean Ware's initials being in the boxes for the 24th and 25th under Rob Lamon's line, right? That's a reasonable inference you can draw, right?
That would be reasonable.
Okay. And based upon what you see there, what shift was Sean Ware working on April 24th and 25th?
That would have been from 0700 hours to 1900 hours, so 7 in the morning to 7 in the evening.
So if you'd have taken it over to her late at night, say on April 23rd, Rob would have been home, right? Because he was working his normal shift in Barstow.
I would imagine.
And if you'd have taken it to her on April 24th, late at night, again, Rob would have been home because he was only working till 7 p.m., right?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So he'd be home to Hellendale about hour and a half, right? From Hellendale to Tehachapi.
Probably about that.
So he'd have been home if you'd have come late at night bringing her this pudding, if you will, right?
Later in the evening, he would have been home if he was just simply coming straight home from work, it would seem.
Okay. And certainly, the only day that we know you came over to her residence would have been April 25th when you dropped off the throwaway phone, right?
You know, Mr. Terry, I don't want to get locked into one of these days because I cannot truthfully to the face tell you that I remember exactly the date of it. I know it was around that time, and as I've testified previously, some of these things kind of give me inferences or refresh my memory about that time, but I don't have a specific remembrance of the actual date. I know it was late April of 2014, though.
That you intended to kill Rob Lamon with poison?
Unfortunately, I did.
Now, with regards to the poison, you indicated you made this, was it a vanilla wafer banana pudding, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And we know from the web searches that were provided by Mr. Smith in your direct examination that you were conducting these web searches sometime in April. Is that right? For different recipes, right?
I believe so, yes, sir.
Okay. Now, when I asked you back in earlier this year at the preliminary hearing, you didn't remember how you got the recipe, right?
I seem to struggle to recollect that, yes, sir.
Okay. Quick, simple question. If you're having Sabrina and you and she are in cahoots, as you say you are, to kill her husband with poison in this banana pudding, why didn't you just get her recipe?
I'm not sure, sir.
I mean, how would you know how she makes it and that her husband would eat it if it wasn't the way she makes it?
We spoke about it briefly, but not the actual recipe, more of the arrangement, so I guess that was a risk I was taking.
Now, you talked about doing some calculations based upon height and weight as to how much poison to put in this particular dietary item, if you will. Is that right?
No, sir. Weight to dose ratio.
Okay. The weight of the individual to the dosage and amount.
Yes, sir.
Okay. How much did you use in order to poison Rob Lamomam?
I don't recall the exact dosage at this time.
You researched it at length. You went on the internet and went in and researched how much you needed to put in the particular item in order to kill a man Rob Lamomam's size, according to you, right?
Yes, I did take all those steps.
And you researched it at length. I've seen your searches with regards to this. You researched in depth with regards to arsenic poisoning yourself, right?
Yes, sir.
But you can't remember how much you had to use in order to kill the man you were going to poison, sir?
I cannot remember.
Now, before you supposedly made up this batch of pudding, and before you supposedly provided it to Sabrina, who was then putting it in her refrigerator that will put her kids at risk of being poisoned and killed, you had mixed up a batch of the arsenic trioxide in order to poison a neighbor's dog. Is that right?
Yes, I had.
To test it out. Right?
Yes, sir.
Now, what did you just put the arsenic trioxide itself? I think you said you put it in some meat. Is that right?
Yes, in a piece of salmon.
How much did you put in the salmon to kill a dog?
I don't recall the exact dose at this time, but it was within the parameters of what I had researched, and based on that, an approximate weight to dose ratio for that dog size.
Now, it was a dog that was next door to the property you were living on, which was behind your grandfather's house. Is that right?
Yes, it was on an adjacent property.
And I believe you testified at the preliminary hearing that it was the house to the west of your father's property. Is that right?
To the west, yes.
Now, in between your grandfather's property and that house to the west is about a 4-foot high chain link fence. Is that right?
Yes, sir.
Did you actually see the dog eat the salmon?
Yes, sir.
Did you actually see the dog die?
No, sir.
But this was your test run, right? Weren't you making sure the dog was going to die?
It was my test run, sir, yes.
And you didn't see whether or not the dog died. Is that right?
That's correct.
You didn't see what symptoms there may have had as a result of ingesting this poison that you put in this salmon, you say. Is that right?
That's correct.
How big was the dog?
Probably 80, 85 pounds.
What type of dog?
I'm not exactly sure.
What was the neighbor's name that owned the dog?
I had not met the neighbors on that side.
Do you know what the dog's name was?
Certainly not.
Do you know whether or not the neighbors had ever come around to ask your grandfather or you whether or not somebody had done something to their dog that was now dead?
I did not hear if any of those questions arose, no.
Was there any evidence that any dog actually died at the neighbor's property next to your grandfather, period, that you're aware of?
Other than circumstantial evidence I'm aware of, nothing I can present to you.
Well, you're saying, and your circumstantial evidence is that there was an annoying dog next door that was bothering you, right?
Yes.
And so you decided to use that dog as a test lab rat, if you will, for your poisoning. Is that right?
Yes, sir.
And that you killed that dog. Or you believe you did because you didn't hear the dog and he wasn't there anymore to annoy you, right?
That would be my circumstantial evidence, yes.
Now, you testified that you had discussions with Sabrina and that she got nervous about the poisoning. Is that right?
Yes, sir.
And so she called Rob when he was at work to tell him not to eat it. Is that right?
That's what she told me, yes.
Are you aware that she never called Rob on either of those 2 days he was up in Tehachapi?
Could you rephrase that question?
Sure. Were you ever aware that Sabrina never called her husband those 2 days he was working in Tehachapi in April?
I was not aware of that.
Now, you testified that part of the reason that you wanted to do the killing of Robert up in Tehachapi was because there was a lack of medical attention or responders. Is that right?
Loosely stated, yes, sir.
Well, because there wasn't a lot of, there wasn't a hospital up there, those types of things, I think, would that be accurate?
Yes, sir.
That you're aware of?
That I'm aware of, correct. I didn't look into that too much.
And I think you also testified you learned that because Rob had been injured on the job up in Tehachapi. Is that right?
Not injured, but had had some sort of illness or malady. I believe it was an anxiety attack that Sabrina told me that he'd experienced, and went in to the emergency room or some clinic up there. I'm not really sure of their capacity up there.
Well, a big difference between an anxiety attack and poisoning, right?
Yes, I'm aware there's a difference.
So, based upon the fact that Rob had an anxiety attack in Tehachapi, according to you, at some point, and had to seek medical attention up in Tehachapi, that you believe that the medical facilities were not all that great, and that there was less likelihood of it being discovered quickly. Is that right?
That was one component of it. Yes, sir.
And because of the discussions you had with Sabrina, and where she talked about Rob's work and what he did at Barstow and what he did up in Tehachapi, you knew that he tended to work alone when he was up in Tehachapi, right?
That's what she told me.
So we've got, leading up to this alleged poisoning, as far as evidence that says Sabrina knew any involvement of this, the only evidence of any communications between you and Sabrina, supposedly about killing her husband, other than your testimony, the only evidence is supposedly these Gmails that you deleted that they haven't been able to get. Police in the DA's office haven't been able to get. Is that right?
I'm not sure of the capacity of their evidence.
Well, I'm asking you, did they present you with these Gmails between you and Sabrina that says she knew you intended to kill her husband and poison him?
They have not presented me with any of those emails.
Well, certainly they would have shown them to you, since you're the one who supposedly is communicating with Sabrina about it, right?
Could you repeat that question?
Sure. They certainly, if they actually had these emails, if they actually existed, would have presented them to you, since you're the one who is communicating with Sabrina purportedly on these emails on the Gmail account. It's you and Sabrina, right? Communicating according to you, right?
Yes, it was Sabrina and I.
And if they actually did exist, certainly they would have presented them to you, since you were the author and recipient of these emails, right?
If they had been able to locate them, yes.
Or if they existed at all, right, sir?
Well, their existence doesn't necessitate the fact that the sheriff's department would have found them and presented them to me. So no, sir.
Well, they've shown all of these metadata from web searches you did for poison, for pudding, for payouts by Bnsf, for questions you had about how quickly life insurance policies are paid off. You, right? Those were the searches you did, and they presented as evidence in this case, right?
Yes, sir.
And if they actually had, these emails actually existed, and they had them, they certainly would have presented them here in this courtroom, right? That would be a logical conclusion, would it not, sir?
Certainly.
And there's another logical conclusion. They never existed, right?
What are you asking me, Mr. Terry?
I'm asking you, Mr. Lamomam, I'm sorry, Mr. Hearn. In fact, there's two possibilities. One, they were not able to recover them after you deleted them. That's a logical possibility, is it not?
Certainly.
The other possibility is they attempted and no such emails existed. Also a possibility, right?
Perhaps for you.
Well, certainly, sir. If they had them and they existed, they would have presented them, right?
That would be a logical possibility.
Now, Mr. Hearn, early on I talked to you about your agreement with the district attorney for your testimony against Ms. Lamont. time that you entered your plea, you were charged with first-degree murder, correct?
When I entered my plea under the plea agreement?
When you were originally charged, you were charged with first-degree murder, sir, correct?
Yes, sir.
With a special circumstance of lying in wait, right?
I believe so.
And your possible sentence under that, if you were convicted of those charges, was life without the possibility of parole, correct?
Or the death penalty.
Well, they'd already waived death on your case, had they not?
Not initially.
They had shortly thereafter, though, had they not, sir?
Not very shortly. It was many months later.
Okay. But before you entered your plea, the maximum penalty you faced was life without the possibility of parole, correct, sir?
I was initially charged on charges that amounted to the death penalty. It wasn't until after my prelim, I believe it was my prelim had begun, that they dropped death penalty.
And then, prior to you entering your plea, the maximum penalty, if you'd gone to trial on the charges you were facing, was life in prison without the possibility of parole, correct?
Yes, sir.
And now, under the plea agreement you've entered into, you're only getting 25 years and a few months, right?
Yes, sir.
And the time that you entered your plea, you were how old?
Which plea are you speaking of, sir?
The plea to the charges that you have entered, sir, in order for you to testify here today, sir.
I pled to those charges in January of this year, sir.
How old were you at the time, sir?
26.
Means you'd probably be out before you were even 50 years old then, sir, after having murdered a man in cold blood. Is that right?
That was definitely cold-blooded, sir.
I'm sorry. I couldn't understand what you said.
I said that was definitely cold-blooded, sir.
My question was, is you would be out before you were 50 years old. Is that right?
That was part of your question, yes, sir.
And that was despite the fact that you committed a cold-blooded murder, right?
Yes, sir.
Now, despite having been warned not to see Sabrina, despite being told by both Jason Bernatine and Robert not to see her again, you continue to see her and pursue her. Is that right?
She initiated that.
Well, did you continue to call her?
Yes.
Did you continue to text her?
Yes.
Did you continue to see her?
Yes.
And you didn't just see her when her husband was at work, you also went and saw her when she was at work, right?
Yes, sir.
Now you've given her the I think you called it, we called it a burner phone, but a disposable phone, right? And
Yes.
that was April 25th was the first time that there were calls made by her phone to you, or text messages sent to your phone. Is that right?
That sounds about right, Mr. Terry.
Now, you indicated at some point you were traveling and you went by Rob's work. Is that right?
Yes, sir.
Okay. What time of day was it that you went by to work?
It would have been the early evening.
Okay, approximately when? What time?
Well, the sun was still up, so probably sometime between 5 and 8 p.m.
And this is, I think you said, was your scouting trip, is that right?
You could call it that, yes, sir.
Okay. And during the time that you and Sabrina were speaking and seeing each other since 2012, she had described the work that Rob did up in Tehachapi, right?
She described it probably sometime in 2013, yes, sir.
And she vaguely kind of told you where the buildings were, is that right?
No, sir, not until we began our plans to kill him.
You went up on your scouting trip, okay, you said after your plans to kill him, is that right?
It was after the poisoning attempt. Then, yes, I believe it was around May when I was up north and driving back down through this area, stopped in Tehachapi to scout. Yes, sir.
Okay. And you said you found the location where Rob was working, because you said you saw the door was open to the building. You saw the Bnsf truck in the building, right?
I did.
And you saw the tire bumpers for the parking slots that had Bnsf on them, right?
I can't say I did.
But you knew which building it was. Is that right?
I was able to locate it, yes, sir.
Okay. And you scouted and you saw Rob, right?
I know I saw his vehicle.
Okay. I thought you testified earlier that you saw him.
I don't remember seeing him.
Okay. So you knew what his vehicle looked like?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Had Sabrina driven that vehicle, or was that Rob's?
He had a small car for commuting.
Well, my question was, has Sabrina driven that car, or is that Rob's car to drive?
I had never seen Sabrina drive it.
But you knew what Rob's car looked like?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And you scouted it too?
On evenings when I would come over and he had taken his truck, his car would be parked in the driveway or on the street in front of their house, so I was pretty familiar with what it looked like.
So you knew where the building was, you knew where Rob was working, you'd scouted it out, and when you went there and you were scouting it out, you were driving your pickup?
Yes, sir.
And you actually drove by the building and took a look, is that right?
Yes, sir.
Was there anybody in your truck with you?
No, sir.
Sure?
Certainly.
Where were you coming back from that day, sir?
A training event up in Monterey.
Now we go you were going to shoot and kill him?
I think so, sir.
You'd already pretty much planned it out in your mind that you were going to get a gun and shoot him and kill him. Is that right?
Yes, sir.
We go forward through June, July, and August. Is that right? Middle of August is when you decided to do it, or thereabouts, right?
That is when I did it. Yes, sir.
Okay. Now you said the burner phone for Sabrina, but not for yourself, to try to hide your affair with Sabrina. Is that right?
No, sir. The nature of the burner phone was to give us a window of time between direct contact between my cell phone and her cell phone, not regarding the affair, regarding a potential criminal investigation.
I know that's what you're saying, sir. I understand that, but you bought the burner phone to break off ties or some type of tie between yourself and Sabrina, or at least something would link you together, right?
Yes, sir.
Regardless of what reason you're giving now, but that's what your purpose was, right?
Well, no, my purpose then was not regardless of the reason I'm giving now. It was directly the reason I'm giving now.
I know you're saying that, sir, and I understand that. My question is that was the intent, was to break off your connection to Sabrina, regardless of what the reason is, sir. Is that right?
Okay.
Is that right?
It was to make it appear that way.
Yes. During that time that the two of you were using this burner phone you provided to her, did you continue to see her?
Yes.
How often?
There wasn't a specific frequency to it, sir. It was intermittent as long as we could line up our schedules.
Well, and I think you've indicated this, you were working full time, right?
Yes, sir.
Were you also going to school at that time during the summer of 2014?
Beginning in the fall, I did, but not in the summer.
So you had a break over the summer?
I did have a couple just vocational classes I had been taking, number of other things going on.
In addition to the work you were doing as a firefighter, right?
Yes, sir.
And usually you guys work, if I'm not mistaken, like 24-hour shifts. Would that be accurate?
That would be our base shift program, but yes, typically it would end up being more just with staffing the way it goes.
Well, was it a situation where you'd be 24 on, 24 off? How was your schedule normally?
A standard schedule was 24 on, 24 off, repeated 4 times over, and then given a block of days off, like either 4 days or 6 days. However, a lot of times that would end up just getting filled with in between shifts. So if you get a 24 between 2 24s, that's already a 72. You can imagine.
And then oftentimes you'd work overtime too, right?
Frequently shift trades, overtime, yes, sir.
Okay. So you were busy, obviously, with your life in Hesperia and working in Redlands. Would that be accurate?
That's accurate.
Okay. And then you also had other social commitments with your family and friends, right?
Certainly.
Other than Sabrina?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And Sabrina obviously was with her husband usually at night, right?
Sometimes I'd imagine.
I'm sorry?
I said sometimes I'd imagine.
Okay. Well, he worked during the day most of the time, right?
Yes, sir.
And he was home in the evenings most of the time, probably, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And she also had her children that she had to deal with, and they were probably out of school for summer, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And they had their activities, such as her son played soccer and was involved in other activities too, right?
Objection relevance.
I think I know where he's going. I'll give him a little leeway, Mr. Smith. Thank you. Objection's overruled. Go ahead, Mr. Terry.
Yes. So her son and children were busy with their activities that she was also responsible for, right?
Yes, sir.
Objection lacks foundation.
He's got you there, Richard.
Oh.
Go ahead.
Thank you, Your Honor. Well, you knew that she was oftentimes involved based upon your conversations with her in their activities and things that they had going, right?
Yes, I knew that they maintained a full social schedule as well.
And so did Sabrina with her friends and acquaintances too, right?
Certainly.
Okay. And you also knew that she worked at least, was she working, to your knowledge, was she working full-time or part-time?
Part-time?
Okay. So at times she was also having to go to work herself, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So obviously you both had busy schedules, and whenever you could see each other was intermittent. Would that be accurate?
Our visits were certainly more intermittent than our conversations, yes, sir.
Okay. In other words, primarily the way you guys were communicating was was by phone calls, long phone calls, and text messaging, right?
Yes.
And that's how you were communicating with each other throughout the summer in 2014, right?
Yes, sir. We did maintain a lot of communication by phone calls and text.
We get to August 17th of 2014. Now, you had testified previously that Sabrina had told you that Rob was going to be working in Tehachapi a couple of weeks before that. Is that right?
I believe I said within the 2 weeks prior to that date.
That he was going to be working in Tehachapi on the 17th. Is that right?
Yes, sir.
If I understand you correctly, Sabrina told you 2 weeks beforehand that Rob was going to be working on August 17th in Tehachapi. Is that right?
Oh, no, I may have misstated that. I meant within those 2 weeks, meaning within about 2 weeks, allowing myself a little variance there because I don't remember the exact date when I found out.
So now it wasn't she told you 2 weeks ahead of time, now it's within 2 weeks she told you that he was going to be working in Tehachapi?
I believe my testimony stayed consistent. I said within 2 weeks.
Okay.
Meaning?
Well, my question is she told you that he's going to be working in Tehachapi within 2 weeks of the 17th. Is that right?
Yes, sir.
And we've heard testimony that Rob didn't know he was going to be working in Tehachapi on the 17th until August 16th. How would Sabrina know to tell you that he would be working there within 2 weeks of that date?
You said August 16th?
Sir?
I wasn't the one to provide you that testimony, sir.
Well, we've heard testimony that Rob got a call on August 16th from John Justice to ask him if he could sub for Sean Ware on Sunday, the 17th. He didn't know until the day before he was killed that he was going to be there. How is Sabrina telling you within 2 weeks of August 17th that Rob was going to be there on August 17th?
That seems strange. I'm not sure.
Now, you had decided to use your motorcycle to travel to Tehachapi that day, is that right?
That's what Sabrina and I had discussed doing, yes.
Did Sabrina tell you to use your motorcycle?
Yes, sir.
Did Sabrina mastermind this whole thing? Is that what you're trying to tell us, sir?
By saying that she told me to take my motorcycle, I'm not saying that she masterminded the whole thing, but I could provide you an answer on that separately.
We'll get to that, sir, in just a minute. In a little bit here. I'm trying to understand. You decided to take your motorcycle to Tehachapi, right?
No, sir. Well, clearly.
She wasn't there. She didn't put you on your motorcycle, sir, did she?
Certainly not.
Okay. You decided to take your motorcycle up to Tehachapi on August 17th, sir. Is that right?
Objection vague in this state's testimony.
Rephrase it, Mr. Chairman.
Certainly. Did you decide to drive your motorcycle to Tehachapi on August 17th to kill Robert Lamomam?
In keeping with our plan, yes.
Okay. You disguised your motorcycle because you've had that forgiven airbrushed on the side of your motorcycle gas tanks since you rebuilt the motorcycle, right?
Yes, sir.
And with a little cross on it, right?
Yes, sir.
You disguised that. Is that right?
The entire tank, sir.
Yeah. You also disguised the mufflers to your motorcycle. Is that right?
I did.
You also were the one who went and purchased clothing, bulky clothing, to wear when you went up to Tehachapi to murder Rob Lamomam, right?
Yes, sir.
You were also the one who obtained a threaded barrel for your Glock handgun. Is that right?
I did, sir.
And you purchased that on the internet?
I did, sir.
I guess they didn't find that internet search then. You were the one who made a sound suppressor, a silencer, out of a mag light using freeze plugs from are those from a motorcycle engine?
I don't think it was specific to a type of engine. It was just specific to the diameter that I purchased for.
So you specifically went and found the right diameter freeze plugs to fit into the mag light barrel and big enough inner diameter for you to shoot a .45 caliber slug through. Is that right?
Yes, sir.
And you built, if I understand it correctly, did you research to find out how to build a silencer?
Somewhat, yes, sir.
Well, did you go on the internet and do a Google search on build your own silencer?
I had some acquaintances who had described for me how silencers work, and I had looked up how some of the typical brands of silencers, specifically the Osprey silencer, how the inside of it was configured as far as where the baffles were placed and all that. And so based on learning a few things about typical effective silencers, went from there and assembled it myself, sir.
And you bought the epoxy to glue the baffles into place. Is that right?
I believe I just had that epoxy for other purposes prior to that.
Okay. And you put this all together, and when did you complete the silencer?
I don't recall. I only recall when I finally tested it, sir.
Well, when did you start building it, sir?
I remember working on it just a few times between shifts, and I know I had a pretty busy schedule around that time, so it was kind of put together over several weeks, probably about 2 weeks, sir.
So when did you start it, in June or July? Or was it in August?
Probably late July, early August, sir.
So you assemble all these items, including the silencer. You put on the clothing, and in the backpack you put a change of clothing. Is that right?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Okay. Did you wear the bulky clothing all the way from your home in Hesperia up to Tehachapi?
Yes, sir.
Now, though, you talked about having a mask for an old man. Was that one of those rubber Halloween masks?
Yes, sir.
Did you wear that the whole way from Hesperia to Tehachapi?
I did, sir.
Okay. In August? Really?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Now, when you arrived there, initially, I think you said that you rode your bike back to the location where the Bnsf building was. Is that right?
I rode my bike there, yes, sir.
Excuse me, Your Honor. Now I'm going to show you what's been previously marked as People's Exhibit 6. This is the stills that Detective Meyer obtained from the, I believe it's Patco video. Showing you page 2 of People's Exhibit 6. Is that your motorcycle?
It appears to be.
That indicates that you were traveling eastbound at approximately 16, 15 hours or 4:15 p.m. Is that right?
Okay.
That sound about right to you?
It does.
Okay. Showing you now the third page of that exhibit, which is another photograph of a motorcycle, or a motorcycle riding away. Is that you on the motorcycle?
It appears to be.
Okay. It appears to be approximately 2 minutes after you were driving in an eastbound direction. You're now headed westbound. Does that sound about right?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Now I want to go over, because I got a little confused during your testimony. Okay, you rode in first, rode around the complex, and then rode back out 2 minutes later. Is that right?
No, sir. I began down Goodrick Drive, headed east. When I saw a Bnsf truck leaving the complex, I turned around and came back out to the nearest cross street.
Okay. You saw a BNSF truck leaving the series of warehouse buildings where the BNS building was?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Showing you page 1 of People's Exhibit 6. You see that? Is that the BNSF truck?
It appears to be.
Okay. And that's traveling past, again, that same camera at Patco, right?
Yes, sir.
And that's 3 minutes before you even appear on the Patco video. Is that right?
Appears to be, according to their timestamp.
Okay. So you were not on at least that portion of Goodrick when the BNSF truck was leaving the yard, right?
It would seem so.
Okay. Now, after you left the, or went past the Patco building, left the complex on your motorcycle, headed westbound, where did you go?
I parked at the nearest cross street to Goodrick, facing north. On that cross street, I'm not sure of the name of it, and either shut down my bike or just stopped there and waited for Rob's vehicle to pass, and then I proceeded back down. Once I was sure he was, I gave it, I believe, a couple minutes. Once I was sure he was not coming back, proceeded back down east on Goodrick, and eventually found the parking spot that I mentioned across the street, and then began the recon of the facility.
Okay. See if I understand this correctly. You left, went down path to the west of the Patco building, because that's the direction you were headed in, right?
I'm not sure where the Patco building is, sir.
You were in a westbound direction, away from the yard, were you not, sir?
At one point I was, yes, sir.
Okay. And that was the photo I showed you earlier, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay. You left there and you said you went to a cross street to the west of where the BNSF building was. Is that right?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Now, once you're parked there, you can't remember if you just had your bike idling or if you shut your bike down or not. I understand that. Been 3 years, I can understand that. How long were you at that location, if you can remember?
I remember seeing Rob drive past me, and then within probably a few minutes, I headed back down Goodrick. So in all, only a few minutes.
Okay. Showing you page 4 of People's Exhibit 6. Is that you on the motorcycle?
It appears to be.
And the time indicated that your motorcycle is headed, and that's headed in an eastbound direction, right?
I'm not sure as to the orientation of Patco. Is its cameras facing north or south?
Well, earlier when I asked you if you're driving in a westbound direction, you said yes, I was headed in a westbound direction. Is that right?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And if we're assuming that that the Patco cameras face southbound, then you would now be in that picture traveling in an eastbound direction. Is that right?
That's correct.
Okay. And that shows you going back down the road at 16:21 hours. Is that right?
It does.
And that's 4:21 p.m. Is that right?
That's correct.
But you, prior to going back in the eastbound direction towards the buildings to do your foot recon, I think is that what you were going to do? In other words, park your motorcycle somewhere and then go on foot to recon the area. Is that right?
That's what I did, yes, sir.
Okay. So that's when you were going back at 16:21 hours, but before you did that, you saw Rob go in that direction. Is that right? Before you went back to do your recon.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Showing you page, I think it's 5 of People's Exhibit 6. Is that the truck that you saw coming back towards the Bnsf building?
It appears to be.
What's the time that truck is going eastbound past Patco towards the Bnsf building?
About 17:11 or 5:11.
Okay. So that's about 50 minutes after you'd already gone eastbound past the building. Is that right?
Yes, sir.
So you wouldn't have seen Rob Lamomam driving past you to go back to the building. You would have already been over at the buildings doing your recon, right? By the time he got back.
I was in the vicinity of the buildings when he got back.
But you testified just a few minutes ago that you saw him pass you before you went to go back to do your foot recon. Did you not?
Objection, vague as to time.
You just previously testified that you'd seen Rob Lamomam pass you when you were parked with your bike west of the buildings. You said you saw him pass you by. Is that right?
Objection, vague as to location.
Is that right?
You know, Mr. Terry, I apologize. I'm having a little bit of a struggle following your sequence.
Sure. I'll break it down a little for you then.
Thank you.
You bet. And you testified earlier that I showed you the photograph earlier. I'll refer to it again.
Counsel, do we have an overhead picture of the might assist?
It probably could. Page 1. Do you see that, sir?
Yes, sir.
Are you able to read it from there? I know you have trouble with your vision.
Yes, sir. I can't make out the
Okay.
words from there.
Just a moment. Oh, did I do it wrong? Oops, sorry. It's up here. Oh, okay. Okay. All right. Thank you. Showing you page 1 of Defense or People's Exhibit 6.
I appreciate it.
No
Sorry
problem.
for the hassle.
Make sure we get this right. Now that's a BNSF truck leaving or headed westbound at approximately 4:12 p.m. Is that right?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And that's the truck you say you saw leaving the BNSF yard when you were arriving?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Show me page 2 of People's Exhibit 6. You previously identified that as being you traveling eastbound at approximately 4:15 p.m. In other words, 3 minutes after the BNSF truck had traveled past that same camera. Is that right?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So you would not have seen the truck leaving the BNSF building since you weren't even there yet, right?
That's not accurate, sir. The area is a very wide open area, and so I was able to see almost from the time I turned on to Goodrick Drive, I was able to see the complex, and I was able to see the BNSF truck leaving. So I doubt there's even footage of me approaching that first time. It was probably right away as I turned on to Goodrick that I could see him pulling out of the complex headed my way.
Well, you couldn't see him coming away from the building, right? You didn't actually see him leaving the building.
Based on the configuration of the industrial complex with wide breezeways between each building, I was able to see him actually pulling out between the buildings and entering the roadway.
All right, showing you page 3 of People's Exhibit 6. Again, this is you identified yourself as the person on that motorcycle, and that's at approximately 4:17. In other words, 2 minutes after the last photograph of you headed in an eastbound direction. You're now headed in a westbound direction. Is that right?
Appears to be, yes, sir.
Okay. It's at that point that you said you drove to the nearest intersection and pulled off the road. Is that right?
You know, I think I misstated that. To clarify, I think prior to any photos of me showing up, prior to that first picture when you see Rob leaving, was when I saw him leaving and returned to the nearest cross street. At this time, I'm not sure. Apparently, I looped back around one more time than I recollected.
Okay. But my question was, okay, earlier you said that when you're headed to westbound direction,
Yes, sir.
you pulled off to the side of the road and you parked your bike. Is that not true or not?
Sir, Mr. Terry, I said that earlier, and I believe that was misstated. Because I don't know where the Patco grinding facility is, my assumption was that this picture was me headed westbound to go back and park at that intersection. However, I believe I had already, prior to any of these pictures being taken, I had already sat at that intersection and idled my bike or sat there and waited for Rob to pass me by.
Now,
If I could, counsel, we do have People's 3 marked, I believe, which is a satellite view.
Yes.
I don't believe Mr. Hearn's seen that. That might be of assistance.
okay, that's fine. All right. I was going to come back to that. All right. Anyway, it's been previously marked as People's Exhibit 3. I can see it.
Thank you, sir.
Mm-hmm. Represent to you that if I could have that just back just a moment, just for
Absolutely.
technical difficulties, mainly because of me. Can you see the building that I've circled there and identify it on People's Exhibit 3?
I can.
Okay, I represent to you that that is the Petco building.
Okay.
Okay. What intersection did you go to in relationship to that building when you went in the westbound direction?
On the map, it appears to be marked as Denison Road.
Okay. So that's where you pulled your bike over, is that right?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Now, you'd indicated now that you believe that you stopped your bike and then saw the Bnsf truck go by you, is that right?
Yes, as I was pulling from Denison onto Goodrick, sometime prior to getting to the Patco building, I saw Mr. Limon leaving the complex at the far right end of the screen, it would be, out of that industrial complex. And so I quickly turned around. I don't believe Patco would have had that on any of their surveillance footage. I returned to Goodrick and Denison, waited there, and he passed me by.
Stopped your motorcycle at Goodrick and Denison, and then you saw the truck go by you. Is that right?
Yes, sir.
And that's when you then went in a eastbound direction,
Yes, sir.
and then 2 minutes later came back in a westbound direction. Is that right?
Evidently, I did loop around one more time than I had thought. I apologize for that confusion.
All right. Now, when you went looping back, you saw, let's see, you pull into that area, you see Rob, you park at Denison and Goodrick, you see Rob pass you by, is that right?
Yes, sir.
Which direction did he go?
He passed me heading south on Denison. He was turning south on Denison and went over the tracks. I'm not sure where he went from there.
Okay. So then you drive into the complex and takes you to do a 2-minute loop, is that right?
Evidently.
Okay. Where did you go after that 2-minute loop?
Just north of the industrial complex that he worked in, on the north side of Goodrick Road, there was a large asphalt pile. I parked behind that and then got off my bike.
Did you leave your bike there to do your recon, foot recon?
I did.
After you did your, and do you recall how long after you driven in a westbound direction was you went back over and parked your bike behind the asphalt to do your foot recon?
According to those pictures, it looked like my extra loop that I hadn't recalled doing was just a few minutes, and then I know as soon as I parked my bike, I took my things with me and began the foot recon right then.
Okay. Now earlier you said you saw Rob go by you though before you did your foot recon, is that right?
While I was parked at the corner of Goodrick and Denison.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
Okay, but that was when he was headed away from the building. Now when he's headed back, you said that you saw him enter into the complex before you started your foot recon. Is that right?
I apologize. Sounds like I was confused on that. No, I was doing my foot recon, about to head back to my motorcycle when I saw him driving back into the facility on Goodrick Drive.
So now you've gone back in, it's about, according to, and I'll show you the page. direction, is that right?
It appears to be.
Approximately 4:21 p.m.
Yeah, it appears to be.
That's where you say you parked your motorcycle and behind the asphalt and then went in to enter the complex on foot. Is that right?
That appears to be.
Okay. So now you didn't see Rob pass you or Rob go by you on your motorcycle except when he was leaving the complex. Is that right?
I saw him leave the complex, and he passed me while I was parked at the corner of Goodrick and Denison Road. I drove back, as we see that picture, headed eastbound,
Right.
parked my bike, did my foot recon, and then it wasn't until I was wrapping up my foot recon that he now came back to the facility.
Okay. How long did you have to wait before Rob came back to the facility, if you remember?
You know, I want to say it was 20 or 30 minutes at least.
Could it have been as many as 50 minutes?
It certainly could have been. It didn't feel that long, but it could have been.
Well, we see you driving past at 16:21 right now, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Page 6 of People 6. That indicate that a Bnsf truck passed the Patco camera at approximately 17:11 or 5:11 p.m.
Yes, sir.
Okay, so that was 50 minutes that you were doing your foot recon then, before he even was approaching the building. Would that be accurate?
Evidently.
Terry, is that a good spot for a
Really
break?
stop.
15 minutes. Remember not to form or express any opinion or discuss the case. We'll see you back in 15 minutes.
Six is in session.
All right, we'll go back on the record in People versus Lamon. Chief President in court, Mr. Terry, and the people are represented by Mr. Smith. Mr. Hearn is still on the stand, subject to cross by Mr. Terry, and all 12 lists four in the box. Good afternoon, everyone.
Good afternoon.
Mr. Terry.
Thank you, Your Honor.
You will.
Mr. Hearn, when we broke, we were just discussing, you started your foot recon, you were going throughout the complex and going in the direction of where the shop was located, is that right?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Where were you when you observed the Bnsf truck returning to the shop, the Bnsf warehouse?
Along the west side of the industrial complex, outside the outer perimeter of the complex, I guess it would be in the furrowed field right there, or between the furrowed field to the west and just outside the industrial complex.
At this time, you still had your disguise on, right?
I did.
Bulky clothing, your your motorcycle helmet,
I did.
your rubber mask. Is that right?
Yes, sir.
You had, I think you said you had rubberized gloves on they were rubberized on the palm and material on the back. Is that right?
Yes, sir.
Okay, sort of like work gloves or gardening gloves.
Yes, sir.
And those were on both hands, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay, you had your backpack on. Is that right?
I did, either on my back or in my hand.
Okay. Were you wearing a bulky coat too?
No, sir. Just a bulky long sleeve shirt.
Okay. And a pair of long pants. Is that right?
Yes, sir.
Okay. You see, Rob Lamon returned to the shop. Is that right?
I did.
Okay. And you went into. Did you go into the shop right away after Rob pulled in and parked the truck?
No, sir. I did not.
Did you take the time to observe him moving around in the warehouse before you entered the warehouse?
No, sir. I saw him pull in and then crossed over to the side of the industrial complex that his industrial building was in, so I wasn't able to really see him in the shop.
So did you walk in the field to the south of the complex over towards the buildings on the east where the Bnsf building was located?
When I saw him pull back in, yes, I crossed actually across the middle of the complex, straight through the middle of the complex, and then moved south, I guess it would be, down towards where his shop was located. Yes, sir.
Okay, and then you came in a northbound direction towards the shop, out of the field area?
No, I descended on it from the north. I was headed south down, essentially down the center corridor of the complex.
Okay. And you went into the shop, is that right?
I did.
And you indicated that at that point you had your backpack off with the handgun with the silencer on it. Is that right?
Yes, sir.
And you reached into the backpack to try to remove the handgun with the silencer on it. Is that right?
I did, sir.
Were you able to actually get it out of the backpack?
Later on, not before firing.
Okay. So you actually shot through the backpack with the gun in the backpack. Is that right?
I believe so.
Okay. Where where was the gun in relationship to Rob when you fired it out through the backpack? In other words, where were you holding it?
I was holding it in my right hand, down low. The firearm portion was down in the depth of the backpack, and the silencer was facing upward. So I was holding the corner of the backpack with my left hand, where the silencer was essentially stuck.
So, if I understand this, so the silencer was facing upwards towards the opening of the backpack? And up towards where the,
Yes,
I'm
sir.
assuming it was a zipper, and it
Yes.
was down inside the backpack, and the silencer was facing up towards the zipper. Would that be accurate?
Yes, it was either a zipper or some sort of drawstring, but near that opening, I remember my left hand holding the corner that the silencer was stuck in, my right hand holding the firearm down low.
So your left hand's holding the silencer, which is facing up towards the sky. Is that right?
Facing up towards Rob.
Okay. Well, when you say it's facing up towards Rob, are you saying that your hand's down towards the bottom of the backpack, where the gun is, where the butt of the gun is, and the silencer is facing towards the top of the backpack, where the drawstring or zipper is?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And so you put your hand inside the backpack and then turned the backpack around? Is that right?
No, sir. I fired from that position.
Okay. Did you try to understand how you would reach into the backpack to reach the trigger when it's at the bottom of the backpack and the silencer is at the top of the backpack to fire it? Did you just fire the gun with your finger still on the outside of the backpack and pull the trigger without holding the gun at the trigger itself?
My right hand was down, holding the gun down in the deeper portion of the backpack.
Okay.
And I used my right hand to pull the trigger, and my left hand to point the silencer / barrel towards Rob.
Where did the shot strike?
I'm not sure, sir.
Well, you indicated that the gun pointed up, the barrel of the gun pointed up, or was it pointed level, or was it pointed down? I'm a little confused, sir.
It was pointed at an upward angle.
So when you first shot Rob the first time, the gun was pointed at an upward angle, is that right?
Yes, sir.
And you did not see where the bullet struck, is that right?
That's correct.
Then, if I understand correctly from your testimony, then you began, or you went around the back of the work truck and went into the office area, is that right?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Showing you photo JMM6963 of People's Exhibit 2. Is that Rob Lamone's vehicle that's closest to us in the frame?
It appears to be.
Okay. Is that the Bnsf truck that you observed the night that you shot and killed Rob Lamone?
Yes, sir, it appears to be.
Okay. Now, you approached him on the driver's side of that vehicle, is that right?
Yes, sir.
And after you shot him the first time, you went around the rear of the vehicle, is that right?
Yes, sir.
And went into the office area, is that right?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Then you began ransacking the inside of the office area, is that right?
As planned.
Now, the only thing you took of value was a laptop computer, is that right?
Yes, sir.
And the discussions where Sabrina told you about incidents involving robberies on the railway or on the railroad had to do with robberies from rail cars, correct?
Yes, sir. Could I explain that further?
One at a time. The discussions you had with Sabrina had to do with trains going through the Tehachapi Loop, having to slow down, and people jumping on rail cars and opening the rail cars and stealing stuff out of it, right?
That was one aspect of our conversation.
And those were things that she told you about Rob's work and some of the work that he did, right? Is that right?
Certainly.
Okay. Now, after you had gone through the office and taken such things as the laptop and a manual regarding barbecues and refrigerators and other items from the office and stuffing them in your backpack, you then went back out into the warehouse area. Is that right?
I did.
Okay. When you were coming back out of the office, is that when you heard some movement or something that caused you to go back and shoot Rob Lamone a second time?
No, sir. It was when I was going into the office initially that first time that I had heard something.
So you shot him a second time before you went into the office?
No, sir.
Okay. You shot him the first time, then you went behind the truck, ransacked the office. At some point you heard something else that caused you to go back and shoot him a second time. Is that right?
To eventually shoot him a second time, not immediately after.
Okay. How much time elapsed from when you shot him the first time to ransacking the office, stuffing stuff into your backpack, coming back out into the warehouse area? Was it before you shot him again?
Only a few moments, minutes rather.
And during those few moments or minutes that you were in ransacking the office, you heard something that led you to believe that maybe Rob wasn't dead.
Objection, this states the testimony.
Sustained.
Is there something that led you to believe during that time frame that you had not killed Rob Lamone with the first shot?
Not during the time I was ransacking the office, no.
Prior to entering the office to ransack it, was there something that led you to believe that you had not killed Rob Lamone with the first shot?
It wasn't a question in my mind until I was leaving the office area when I recalled that I had heard him what sounded like exhale right around the time I was entering the office initially. So as I was leaving the office, it became something that triggered a little suspicion in my mind.
So you went back to finish your job and finish him off, huh? Is that right?
Essentially.
Okay. Now, when you shot him the second time, where were you standing, or were you kneeling? Were you laying down? What were you doing?
I was standing.
And where was Rob? I'm assuming Rob was laying on the floor of the warehouse. Is that right?
Yes, he was.
Okay. He's laying on the concrete pavement, right?
He was.
Laying next to the truck, right?
He was.
And you stood. Where were you standing when you shot him the second time, sir?
Positioned in the direction of his feet. So I was standing towards the back of the truck on the driver's side, in the area of his feet, and probably within 2 or 3 feet of his feet.
And when you shot him the second time, where did you shoot him the second time?
In an upward direction towards his head as he was laying away from me.
Okay. So, and at that point, you by then had removed your gun from the backpack that you had it in. Is that right?
I had.
And after you had shot Rob Lamomam, you then did you run to your motorcycle or just walk to your walk back to your motorcycle?
I closed the garage door and ran the first several hundred feet and then resumed walking back to my motorcycle.
And your motorcycle was parked, was it still parked up at that pile of pavement?
It was.
Okay. You got back on your motorcycle with your disguise and all still intact, is that right?
Yes, sir.
And you then, I think you said you got back onto the freeway, is that right?
Yes, sir.
And then you pulled off at the first exit off of 58 after you got on the freeway, and that's when you changed your clothes, is that right?
If not the first exit, one of the first exits, sir.
Okay. I think you said it was a more rural area, is that right?
It was.
Okay. And you changed your clothes. Where did you go to change your clothes?
Just standing in that rural area.
Okay. So you stripped down to your skivvies and put your shorts and shirt on, is that right?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And there was no one else around when you were doing all this, right?
There was no one nearby that area.
And then you drove back. Oh, I forgot. Did you take the tape or the disguise off the muffler of your motorcycle at that time?
I did.
And off the tank of your motorcycle?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And then you drove back down 58 to the 395 Four Corners, I think it's called, right?
Yes, sir.
And that's when you gassed up and got some drinks at the Pilot gas station there?
I did.
And then you drove home. Is that right?
Yes, sir.
Okay. You go to work the next day?
I don't recall my schedule. At that time, I believe I did go to work the next day.
Now, you had indicated that Sabrina had expressed to you that Rob wasn't real good at his co-parenting skills with his kids. Is that right?
Yes.
And there were things that you said that were indications such as you were told or you believed that Robbie Jr. And his dad never worked on the boat together. Is that right?
I believe that was one example I gave.
And I believe you also indicated that he wasn't really involved in the kids' lives. Is that right?
In certain ways, that it was one of her complaints against Rob, yes.
You said, and if I'm not mistaken, I think you said that at some point during, I think you said it was late 2013 into the 2014 time frame, that your discussions with Sabrina turned dark. Is that right?
Late 2013 would have certainly been a pivotal time in our relationship where some pretty dark discussions did arise. Yes, sir.
And you indicated that she was not happy with her marriage with Rob. Is that right?
As it turns out, that's what she told me.
These are things that you and she talked about during the course of your relationship, that she was not happy with Rob and she didn't want to be with Rob anymore. Is that right? In 2013 and 2014.
Yes, sir.
Did she ever say to you that she didn't love Rob anymore?
Yes, sir.
Did she ever tell you that she didn't want to be with him anymore?
Yes, sir.
Show you what's been previously marked. Hadn't been admitted previously. I'll ask to be admitted. There was testimony about it earlier. Defense Exhibit A. Defense Exhibit A is the cell phone download from Robert Lamon's phone. Direct your attention. You see what the first date on that download is?
It appears to be 6/10/2014.
This is a time when your discussions with Sabrina have gone past, I think you said, dark into planning to kill Robert because she didn't want to be with him anymore. Is that right?
6/10/2014 would definitely have been a time when we had already attempted on his life once, and certainly she expressed that she did not have ongoing love for Robert.
See the columns on the right or full left-hand side, the numbers?
I do.
I ask you to turn to the column or the number 13 entry.
Yes, sir.
Is that a message from Sabrina to Rob Lamon?
It appears to be.
It's a text message.
It is.
What does it say?
He says, "Bear!" Exclamation point! Exclamation point! Exclamation point! Exclamation point! I hope that your day is great. In all caps. Smiley face. JOS. I'm not sure who that is. Not here. And Viola said that she would CK. Period. For me. Period. I don't think so. Frown face. Sorry. And 3 exclamation points.
Directing your attention to the 18 entry. Entry number 18. Who's that from?
Appears to be from Sabrina.
And it's to Rob Lamon?
Yes.
Okay. And what does it say?
I love you, Rob Lamon, with 3 exclamation points.
How about entry number 20?
It says, what are you asking about?
What does entry number 20 say?
Says I have to work tomorrow with a number of frown faces.
Directing your attention to number 23. Who is that from?
Appears to be from Sabrina.
And what does it say?
Says, I just love you so much, with a number of periods. You are a good one, Brina, with 3 periods.
Turning your attention to entries numbers 70 through 72. Would you please refer to those, sir?
Yes, sir.
What do those entries say?
70 says, love you, with 3 periods. 71 says, love you too, exclamation point. Have a great day, period. 72 says, thanks, Bear, you too, exclamation point. Actually, 3 exclamation points.
And that's the back and forth between Sabrina Limon and Rob Lamon, right? Isn't that who
That is
that exchange is between?
very small part of their exchanges, yes.
Turning your attention to number 74, Entry number 74. What does that one say?
It says no with 4 smiley faces. It says I love you with another 5 smiley faces from Sabrina.
How about entries 100 through 103? Is that exchange between Sabrina and Rob Lamomam?
You said 100 and 103?
100 through 103, sir, yes.
Yes, those are all between Sabrina and Robert.
And what do they say?
Love you with some sort of quotation mark and then a number of exclamation points. 101 says, let's go to a walk tonight, smiley face, K, question mark, exclamation point. 102 says, yes, I would yes, with some exclamation points. I would love that, period. Sunset, with a number of periods. 103 says awesome with 4 smiley faces.
I'm not going to go through all of these. How about we skip ahead to 427 through 429?
You said 427?
Yes, sir. Entry numbers 427 through 429, sir.
Yes, sir, from Sabrina, all of these. One says, I love you. Next one says, I love you. I love you too, Brina, exclamation point. Hope your day is good. And the last one says, thanks, baby, exclamation point. Yours too, with 3 smiley faces.
We'll skip ahead to entry number 474. What's the date on that particular entry?
August 17th, 2014.
In other words, the day you murdered him. Right, sir?
That was our plan.
I understand that's what you say, sir. My question is that the day you murdered him?
It appears to be.
Now, with regards to that entry, what did Sabrina say to her husband before you killed him?
Says bear, exclamation point. I hope you are having a good day, period. I'm going to my mom's to visit for a bit, period. Call me on my cell, period. Love you, responder Rob, 3 exclamation points. I'm sorry, 3 smiley faces.
After you killed her husband, did you immediately go over in the next few days to see her?
Not in the next few days.
when did you first start going over to see Sabrina?
Within about a week or two.
Now, you indicated that during the course of your relationship with her from late 2013 into the time of Robert's death, that your conversations with Sabrina indicated to you that she no longer loved her husband. Is that right?
She certainly said that, and her actions towards me indicated that.
And you also testified that the conversations about her husband had gone dark. Is that right?
At some point they did.
Okay. And you indicated that, based upon that, you claimed that Sabrina had decided that her husband had to die. Is that right?
She had.
And there was no doubt in your mind that she had no feelings for Robert at all by the time you murdered her husband. Is that right?
I don't believe I've testified to that.
Well, my question is, sir, you told us that you believe that she no longer wanted to be with her husband, right?
Yes.
Okay. And you indicated that your conversations with her beginning the end of 2013 into 2014 had turned dark, and there was no indication to you that she loved her husband anymore, right?
There was certainly a lack of love or love lost, and she clearly indicated that to me on numerous occasions.
Now, sir, I wanted to get into another area. You were asked about a story that you had written, or a couple of stories you'd written. Were they actually published?
The book was not published.
Okay. But these were stories that you'd written about your experience as a firefighter. Is that right?
The book itself was a compilation of stories, some that I had written and some that had been sent in. Yes, sir.
Okay, you wrote a couple of stories that were part of this compilation book that was not published. Is that right?
It was in the pre-publishing phase. Yes, sir.
Defendants Exhibit Q, mark next in order.
So Terry asked to Exhibit A, that was marked but not admitted. Are you seeking submission?
If I hadn't previously, it would have to be admitted. Yes.
Mr. Smith, any objection?
I haven't reviewed it in its entirety. If I could review it prior to submitting.
Not a problem. We can do that.
That's fine. We can take care of that.
Okay.
It was records that were provided by the people. So
Next in order is Defendants Q.
Yeah.
Have you seen that, Mr. Smith?
Not yet.
getting to see it right now, Your Honor. Okay.
Thank you.
Mr. Hearn, an article, one of the articles you wrote that was part of that compilation.
It appears to be.
Okay. Directing your attention to the bottom of the first page. It says 32 new messages your phone read. Is that right? Is that what you wrote?
Yes, sir.
Okay. It says it must be that crazy girl Jen. Is that right?
That's what's written.
Okay. Let me ask you this. When was this story written?
Probably summer of 2012.
Okay. And at this this particular story is entitled Silver Lakes, is that right?
It is.
Okay. Now, you refer to these 32 messages, new messages you got, and you indicate this was summer of 2012 when you wrote this. Is that right?
Yes.
That's from a woman named Jennifer?
No, the name was changed for the sake of the story.
Says that must be that crazy girl Jen, right? Was that you changed it from Jen to Jen from something else?
The identity of the female in this story is a female that is not named Jen or Jennifer.
Okay. But you were involved at one point or communicating extensively with a woman by the name of Jennifer Lynch, were you not?
I guess you could say extensively. Not very. Not to the extent of my dealings with Sabrina.
Well, at the same time you were seeing Sabrina, isn't it true that you and Jennifer were sending text messages back and forth to each other at the same time?
Objection relevance.
Overruled.
Yes, I did text a woman named Jen around that time.
Okay. And that was Jennifer Lynch, right?
Yes.
Okay. And you were exchanging photographs like you did with Sabrina, right?
Objection
don't.
vague as to time.
Sustained.
Well, since I have limited access to your phone records, I'll say from November of 2013 into February or March of 2014.
Objection argumentative.
Sustained.
Based upon the records I've reviewed of your phone, starting November of 2013 through, say, March of 2014, you were communicating with an individual by the name of Jennifer Lennox by text message, phone call, and pictures, right?
I believe all of those, yes.
Okay. And Jennifer Lynch, that you knew at the time, was a married woman with 2 children, right?
An estranged woman with 2 children, yes.
Well, she was married with 2 children, correct?
That's my understanding.
Defense Exhibit R, North Mason order.
So Terry, were you seeking to move in Q, as in Quebec?
I will be moving in Q in a moment, Your Honor.
Okay.
That's fine.
Next we have R, Mr.
Yes, Your Honor.
Smith, as in Romeo. Go ahead, Mr.
Showing you what's been marked as Defense Exhibit R. Is the woman in the first picture, Jennifer Lentz.
To be honest with you, Mr. Terry, I really can't tell.
Turn to the third picture, sir.
Yes, sir?
Is that Jennifer Lentz as you recall her?
It appears to be.
Okay. And the middle picture, who's in the middle picture?
Sabrina.
This time, Your Honor, I'd ask to move People's Exhibit Q and R into evidence.
Any objection, Mr. Smith?
Object as foundation.
As to
Foundation for the photographs.
for the photograph?
Yes. What, Q?
He's
No, no, no.
identified the
Let's
photograph.
Strike that. Let's do it one at a time. He asked to move in Q and R. Q was the correct
No
story.
objection. No objection.
No objection to Q. Q would be admitted. One second, Mr. Chair. Your objection as to R, Mr. Smith, is lack of foundation
Can't identify the initial photograph, Your Honor.
as to the first of the three.
Yes.
Okay. Mr. Terry.
Your Honor,
Are you seeking to admit the other two pictures?
yes.
Okay.
The other one I can have identified later.
We will admit people's, strike that, defense R as in Romeo, pages 2 and 3, not the first page. The jury can see Deputy Barron wears many hats.
He deals with this more than I do. Showing you the second page of defense exhibit R. That's the photograph of Sabrina.
It appears to be.
This is third page. That's a picture of Jennifer Lentz. Is that right?
It appears to be.
This was another married woman that you were contacting on a regular basis, right?
I remember flirting with her a couple times over text, and I met her once for probably 15 minutes, and that was the extent of our friendship.
But during those text messages and phone calls that you had with Jennifer, didn't you compliment her or say the right things to woo her, sir, if you will?
Objection relevant.
Give me 1 minute with the attorneys for 1 second, folks. on the weekend 10 minutes early? Hearing none, I will let you go. Remember not to form or express any opinion nor discuss the case. Remember not to read, watch, or listen to any